Since my channel is focused on fairy tales and I have some thoughts on this situation, I wanted to chime in with a short video while the discussion around this is still somewhat relevant, even though I'm a bit late to the party. But anyway, I assume that most people have probably heard about it by now, but if you haven't and you don't know anything about the surrounding context, there's this conservative company called Daily Wire that's doing their version of Snow White, which is a reaction to the Disney's new woke version. It's essentially a big publicity stunt, similar to the thing they did with the situation around Hershey's recently. That's not to say I have anything against it, I think it's actually pretty smart, and even though I don't watch their content almost at all anymore, I do like what Daily Wire is doing for the most part, especially with entertainment. I recently watched the video Michael Knowles did with Eric July and I found it very interesting. But when it comes to Daily Wire adapting Snow White, there are things I don't like. The teaser they've put out very much remind me of Once Upon a Time because of Brad Cooper in that dress. I don't know why, but Americans have a tendency to glamorize everything, so the costumes are super pristine, everybody is beautiful like a model, and it has this effect where nothing seems genuine or authentic, everything looks artificial. Like, you can see that the actors just left the makeup and costume department, and they are definitely not living in this environment and wearing those clothes every day. And this is also connected to another aspect which Hollywood and even Daily Wire apparently can do well, and that's historical accuracy. This will be a bit of a tangent, but bear with me please. Daily Wire also just announced that they are adapting the Pendragon cycle, which I've never read and I only know it's a series of historical fantasy books. It apparently attempts to present the Arthurian legends in a historical setting, while presenting the story with a reality the reader can connect with, which sounds pretty similar to the approach of The Witcher to me. And one thing I really love about The Witcher is that even though it's a fantasy, the medieval visuals are so well done that it looks almost like Middle Ages in our world, with just subtle fantasy elements. When you look at the behind the scenes videos around the Pendragon cycle which Daily Wire have put out, you can see that they are shooting in Hungary, and they are using the same filming location which was built for The Last Kingdom. And just as this Netflix show, Daily Wire is also using the same dumb fantasy costumes and look for Vikings, which they themselves say.
What you're looking at is a room full of Saxons being built. Saxons are our version of the Vikings. The long hair and the long beards and all the dirt and the war paint and such. These are the dangerous ones to watch out for, and we have almost 200 of them to build today. So this wonderful team is doing a great job.
Even though I liked them myself at one point, I'm really tired of TV shows like Vikings or The Last Kingdom, which started presenting Vikings like leather-wearing, fur-covered hipsters with man buns and side cuts. People often defend this and say why it's such a big deal when these are just shows meant for entertainment and not historical documentaries. The problem is that it's influencing the public's view of history, and this shit then spreads like wildfire. Assassin's Creed Valhalla adopted exactly the same portrayal of Vikings. If you like this kind of stuff and you know it's pure fantasy, then it's fine, but I'm afraid that most people don't know it has nothing to do with history and take it at face value. When you see normies dress up as Vikings, it always looks like this. YouTube is full of videos where people have the same haircuts, they draw runes on their face, wear some sort of leather armor or biker outfit, they have fur on their shoulders and sing "My Mother Told Me" or something similar. It's cringe and I'm so tired of it, but most people love it and it gets millions of views unfortunately. It's so bad that there are even internet groups making fun of it. So seeing Daily Wire also contributing to this is pretty disappointing, and while I get that this is a fantasy and Snow White is a fairy tale, there should still be some level of historical accuracy in both cases in my opinion. And when this is their idea of Vikings, I'm afraid of how they will portray Middle Ages in Snow White. Another thing which bothers me is Disneyfication and pussification of fairy tales in general. This is a topic for a whole nother video I wanted to do for like a year now, but old fairy tales used to be pretty creepy and morbid, because they were based on folklore which is the same. Our Czech live-action fairy tales from the 70s and 80s are straight up horrors at times. Even the old Disney Snow White still has a few scenes which are pretty creepy. I remember that as a kid I was a bit afraid of the scenes where Snow White is running through the forest and then when the evil queen is turning into the old hag. But as the time goes on and people have become softer and softer when it comes to raising children, even the fairy tales have changed, and nowadays they are more like dumb comedies with cringy humor. And just to be clear, I don't mind family-friendly fairy tales, especially when they are well written, so even adults can laugh with the kids. What I don't like is that those are the only ones being made today, and there's no new fairy tales with horror elements anymore. Especially fairy tales which would be inspired by actual folklore like old classical fairy tales. And I think that that's a hole in the market which Daily Wire could have filled with their version of Snow White and even other fairy tales. But I doubt that they would do it since they started Bentkey, which is an entertainment company targeted on kids and it's supposed to be family friendly. Oh well. My point with this video is that all the things I mentioned are exactly what I don't like about Hollywood. As I said, I hate when they make everything look pristine, and I cringe almost every time when I see them trying to do anything historical. There are rare exceptions like Outlaw King and The Northman, but for the most part it's really bad. And from what I've seen so far, Daily Wire has exactly the same approach to these things. The only difference is that they are not woke, which is great, but it's just not enough for me. I want them to succeed because Hollywood desperately needs some competition, but if they want to compete with this giant, they need to be better than them in more than just one way, and actually innovate, especially in the aspects which could be easily fixed. So when you are adapting something from European folklore, culture or history, Daily Wire, hire someone who actually understands these things, so your movie looks authentic, genuine, historically accurate, and maybe even has a bit of that creepy atmosphere which our folklore has. Either do that or just keep doing westerns or movies about school shootings, because those are settings from your culture which you at least understand. If you want to adapt something from European history or folklore and do a good job, you need to put in more effort.